Hi, everyone. Welcome back. I hope you've had a good lunch break and you had a chance to maybe meet the other attendees via the meeting hub. If you haven't had a chance to do that, be sure to check it out at the next break. We're going to jump right into it. So up next, we have Cathy Jamieson, Head of Communications for PayPal. Now, Cathy is a seasoned corporate affairs and PR professional with more than 20 years of experience. Prior to joining PayPal, she was actually with the National Broadband Network, and prior to that was head of comms for Microsoft Australia. So while at Microsoft, she led the strategy and execution for many high-profile consumer product launches, including Vista, Windows 7, Office 2010. Before moving in-house, though, she spent 7 years in an IT specialist PR agency in the heady days of the dot-com boom. While in agency, she worked on clients including IBM, Capgemini, and Fuji Xerox. In her current role, she is responsible for all external and internal communications for PayPal Australia. So I hope you've got your questions ready. Please do pop them into the live Q&A anytime during the session. And whenever appropriate, we'll go ahead and get those answered for you. So Cathy, please talk to us about creating an executive communications plan.
Thank you so much, Christy, and hello everybody, and it's great to be here, and I do hope that you had a great lunch, and I know I'm in a tough spot after lunch. I hope you're not all too feeling like sneezy as we head into, another session virtually, and it is a bit tough doing things virtually. But yes, creating an executive communications plan. So I think a really important thing is that everybody is different and all of your executives are different, and you've really got to think about the executive that you are representing. Most executives are good communicators. They wouldn't have gotten to where they've got without some communication skills. However, executives who are new into the role or new into the company or who have just moved up to that next level can sometimes need a higher touch than others. And as a comms professional, you're probably very good at reading people, and you think about the executive, the type of communicator they are, and their strengths and weaknesses. And I think it's a great thing to really build on people's strengths. If they want to work through their weaknesses, that is something you can also do. But building on people's strengths as communicators is really good. So have a look at your executive, get to know them in those initial meetings. Are they warm, intelligent, insightful? Are they a perfect executive, or are they reserved? Are they somebody who talks a lot but doesn't necessarily have solid content? And you know that type of executive. They can talk underwater, but they may not necessarily say anything. Like 5 minutes goes by and you go, yes, what's going to that? And it's great. People can talk, but you need to then be able to structure them into saying and delivering relevant and useful information. Are they collaborative but can't make a decision? Are they really smart? Are they lazy? Are they technically brilliant but have low people skills? Are they super intelligent and like thinking about theory and, communicating theory, but they're actually talking to the telesales team and it's not particularly relevant? Are they transactional and, results oriented, but they don't have a great EQ? What's your executive like? You need to kind of establish their personality type. The easiest execs to work with, of course, are the ones that have opinions, that share them with you, that are interested in employee comms and that understand the importance of leadership communications. And the hardest ones are those ones that don't quite get it and pretty much leave you alone to do what you want to do, which is okay if they're happy with what you want to do, with what you're doing. But the best leadership communications are those that are authentic, where your executive is intimately involved and understands the importance of leadership communications for the ongoing prosperity of the business. So in your initial meeting with your executive, you really need to find out from them what their priorities are. And I think before you go down into communications priorities, talk to them about their business priorities. And I think that being a comms person, people like to put us in this little box, but understanding the whole aspect of the business, what's important, what's not, from the highest level is really important. And understanding those business priorities can then help you contextualize it and create the comms priorities, because we're the comms experts. So we'll let you know what the comms strategy should be. So thinking about those business priorities, obviously it's with a bit of a lens to employee comms. So it could be things like, I want to be retaining the talent in this current competitive market, or I want to create better partnerships with the other business units that we deal with, or I want to improve the operations and the executions and the speed to delivery. I want to really be able to explain to people the strategy and how their role fits in with that. My business priority is to drive, higher sales and greater customer satisfaction. I want to increase the focus on ethics and compliance. I want, product development to be timely. There are a multitude of business priorities, and it's really important to understand those. Business priorities your executive might have, I remember I was doing with an executive, they had 13, but there were 5 that were more relevant for employee comms, and we focused in for those. An incoming executive will often do like a bit of a listening tour to help them determine their priorities, and they'll also, investigated the finances of their division or the business. And you need to distill like all of their business priorities and think about what are the ones that we really want to communicate down to the staff, to their direct reports, or upwards. If your exec jumps straight away to what they want to achieve with exec communications, that's okay, but it's better off to get that holistic picture at the start and for you to come up with those comms strategies that will meet their business objectives. Because, we've probably all had times where you go in and you meet with an executive and they go, I want a newsletter, or I want a weekly update on this. And you're thinking the last thing people need is another email. We've already got this, that, and the other thing. So let me solve this for you. Just tell me what you want to do. Let me solve it for you. The next thing you need to ask your executive is, what are your audiences? Because a good leadership comms plan, executive comms plan, doesn't just focus on downwards to the frontline employees. You're also thinking about how executive comms go up and sideways and to their direct reports, just like that little one level down. So where does your exec want support for you to manage those comms? Do they want your assistance in communicating with the board and the CEO to their direct reports? Do they want what you create to be in a form that can then be like sent all the way up the line? How do they communicate crosswise to their peers? So sometimes a comms program that you develop can be used to reach multiple audiences. For example, if you do a newsletter or a specific project update that has a great executive summary at the start, or a snapshot, graph, or, progress chart, that could be sent to employees, but it can also be sent to the exec's manager and to the executive's peers. So you don't have to like create whole different comms plans for every audience. You just need to think about those audiences. And particularly if you can help your executive communicate effectively up, they will definitely be thanking you for that. You also, it's nice to think about, how can I involve my executives' peers or superiors in my comms strategy? So if we have a regular town hall meeting, who do I invite? Who are the important partners? Who do those teams, who does my exec's team need to hear from? And who would it just be really like politically wise to invite to present to the staff, or to have a section from in the newsletter, or to have a standing regular meeting with? So you can think about it in those ways. And with each audience, you'll have different objectives. So your executive's overall goal may be to create improved operations and accountability. So that exec's goal with their direct reports may initially be to have them step up and take more responsibility for decisioning and delivery. And with the CEO and peer executives, or with global owners, if you work in a global organisation and you're in a subsidiary like I do, you may wish to demonstrate progress against that priority upwards for your executive. Once you've got the priorities and the audiences, you can move forward and think about key messages by audience and a timeline, and how you're going to land each message, and your channels and your frequency. But before that, you need to do another critical. You've listened to your executive, now you need to listen to the employees and the other audience groups, and just do a bit of a reality check on what your executive has told you. Because while your exec may have specific priorities and goals, this listening to the staff and listening to those other important audiences may uncover engagement issues or aspects that you can help address. So how are the employees experiencing the leadership communications? What do they want to hear from leadership? What channels do they prefer? And you need to do this before you lock in like your full plan. I think the communications people are uniquely positioned to have a really direct line into employees across the org. I've got to say, I find this a lot harder to do remotely, because I used to just go for lunch with people, or catch up with them in their kitchen, or have a bit of a corridor conversation. But it is still possible. And if you become too senior to have that direct line to frontline employees yourself, so if like me, you've been around for a while and you're older than most of the other staff, and you walk up and you talk to a frontline junior salesperson, and you can tell that they're thinking, oh my goodness, I'm talking to somebody on the leadership team, and they're not going to talk to you. Ask your direct reports, if you have them, to go and have those conversations and to find out what employees really think. Surveys are great, but having an informal chat is also a very good way to gather information on what people really think and what they want. And you can do it formally, gathering information with, surveys and focus groups. You can do it informally, both with managers and staff, which is the have a chat approach I've just discussed. It also really helps to identify the unofficial power structures and relationships in the organisation. This is hard to do when you first land, but if you've got staff who've been there for a while, you can ask them. So what I mean by this is that Penny may lead the product department, but you know that it's Dan who actually is the conduit of information between product and marketing, because their role is to go both ways. So Dan actually knows what product thinks and what marketing thinks. And Dan is like a linchpin and is on, regular weekly meetings with, 30 people in the org. Dan's a good person to talk to. If you can ask these pivotal people who've got like the networks within the organisation what their opinion is, that's a way to get a really good sense check as well. You may uncover that staff think that your exec is potentially all talk, no action, or that your exec is too serious, or that your exec is intimidating, or that your exec is seen as lightweight and not influential, and that they're all feeling really nervous that, their division or department's going to get, pushed around because your exec's not carrying their weight and not, got impact and influence. All of these things are much easier to gather, I find, verbally than through survey results. So before I go on to like how you would construct your plan, someone actually gave me some really good advice once, and this is more relevant to just good employee comms in general, but I thought I would share it because it's relevant to executive communications as well. The thing that people are really looking for in good employee comms is that it is useful to them. And I keep that at the top of my mind all the time. Is this useful? Is it easy to understand? Does it get to the point? Is it useful? The things that people most want to know about, and I think this is like, I don't know where this is from. This is from a LinkedIn survey from ages ago or something, but I regularly think about this. Am I giving people useful information? People want to know about the reward, and like that's financial stuff, like, how's the business doing? What are the bonus multipliers this year, etc. They want recognition, which is non-monetary, but it's a recognition by peers, leaders, their direct managers. They want to know about opportunity for advancement, to experience different areas, what opportunities there are for, jobs and experiences within the business. They want to know about the processes, are things changing? What's my level of autonomy? What's my workload? They want to know about, they love personal pride stories, how people feel about their job, how the job makes them feel, how other people are doing. What's the timeline for product? What am I working on? Do I get a choice? What's my creative license? And their working environment. So at the moment for me, that's home. PayPal's working at home till September globally. But, people are fascinated with information about, the desk, the building, the facilities, are you changing the drinks in the fridge for goodness sake? The location of the office, their workspace, what model phone we're rolling out to the staff, that kind of thing. With executive communications, people also want a little bit more. They want to feel a personal connection with the executives, particularly during crisis or change. They really want to know about strategy and the why, and that also becomes more important in times of change or crisis. And I mean, my goodness, everything's always changing now. And like after 2020, I think this will hold true for a while. We are in a period of change. They want to know about the vision for the future, and they want to know that their executives have a solid vision for the future. And they also want to know the company mission and values and the position of the company in relation to world events and issues. And I think nothing makes that more clear than when we looked at Black Lives Matter happening last year, and most leadership comms came out and said something about that and needed to say something about that because it was such a revelation of deep-seated issues across the world and something that needed to be addressed, that leaders needed to take a stand on. Just going back to number one there in executive comms, personal connections. So everyone has friends and families, and talking about sharing times with your friends, your family and your pet, and sharing a few holiday snaps of your exec at home can be really good. Who doesn't love a picture of somebody in the park with their dog? That's nice. But you need to be really careful about sharing too much detail. And also you need to be careful about sharing anything that can highlight the divide in wealth between your executive and the broader staff, because that will stop connections from being built. For example, I worked with an executive who spent a lot of time renovating their house in their spare time, and at all hands or whatever, they would stand up and they would say, I hope you had a great Easter long weekend. I spent the time with my wife choosing the new tiles for the bathroom and the kitchen. Everyone can relate to that. What the exec didn't say was that they had a mansion on the foreshore with a massive harbour view. that what he'd really spent the majority of his time on over the Easter long weekend was helping to design their custom-built temperature-controlled cellar for his very expensive wine collection, and that the tiles that they bought cost more than some people would spend on rent in a year. So people expect executives to have lifestyles that are aspirational, but you don't want it to cause alienation or a feeling that your executive doesn't understand how staff live. So if you're building that personal connection, just be careful, about the pictures from Aspen, about the, being on the yacht, about the amount of money spent, about the new piece of Canturi jewelry or whatever, and keep it real and keep it relatable. It sounds simple, but and it sounds obvious, but it's easy to overlook that. Okay, then you can bring it all together. You've got your executives' business priorities, the key audiences, you've done your staff listening to determine the audience needs, to uncover any issues that the executive is unaware of, develop up key messages by audience, you look at a message and content timeline. Now, this may be that you have your employee survey at the same time every year, same time every quarter. So you're going to know that you can talk about taking actions off that, and you can listen to your employees, and you'll have something around feedback. You may have a family fun day. So look at your calendar, think about the messages and the priorities of the business, and build a calendar. Like, when do you want to hit these messages and when? You have to remain agile with that, as 2020 has certainly shown us. Then there are the channels. I'm going to assume that you guys all know the kinds of channels you can use: town halls, emails, newsletters, intranet, videos hosted on your intranet, employee surveys, internal blogs, coffee catch-ups, quarterly buffet lunches with new staffers, although COVID made that impossible. And then, what's the frequency? I actually think it's better to do fewer things and do them well, because of the huge amount of information that flows around an organization. So if you put a lot of effort into a monthly CEO update, then people will look out for that and they'll read it. If it's quality content, it's useful, focus on the vision, strategy, creates personal connection, rather than trying to do too much all at once. And I also have a bit of a note on kind of internal social engagement from senior executives. There are a lot of digital channels, both internal and external, and if you're going to take them on, you really have to service them well. For example, if you are going to run your executives' LinkedIn and they're an expert in, intellectual property or something quite learned, you don't want to be liking articles that actually aren't great articles. You need that executive to be authentic and involved in what they're doing on LinkedIn. But also with the digital internal channels, if your sales team are using Salesforce and they're all chatting away and suddenly your CEO appears and asks them the question, that can make people feel very uncomfortable. It's like friending your boss on Facebook or being asked to friend your boss on Facebook. People are kind of treating these channels as safe spaces and kind of informal spaces, and then suddenly there's somebody extremely senior there. So it could be okay. It depends on your executive's personality and, how dedicated they are to maintaining involvement on social channels. There is research that shows that the more that senior executives use internal social and internal, intranet and all the other assets that you have, the more that staff will use it. But it can actually really be uncomfortable and potentially scary for somebody to get a social, ding from the CEO going, hey, how's that project going? It'll just send them into a panic. So just a little word of warning. I think that if you're going to use internal social for your executive, it's best to keep it professional and to not cross too many boundaries. I'd just like to say how important it is to consider your executive's EA always. Internal, external, engaging with them, everything. The EA is the gatekeeper of their calendar, preps all their materials and meetings, and really good EAs protect their executives from time wasters and help them be more effective and successful. They often manage their email address and send comms on their behalf, and they can get you a spot in the diary when it looks completely full, or they can deny you access. Dealing respectively and collaboratively with your exec's EA is crucial to any executive comms engagement. They can be your greatest ally. They can be a roadblock. They are usually incredibly capable women. I think in my entire career, I have never worked with a male EA. They are, juggling multiple balls in the air at the time. They're smart and they are crucial to your executive success. Treat them with respect and win them over, and having the EA on your side will help you serve the executive that you both serve. Another thing that is good to do is to do a bit of a sweep of how your exec turns up internally and externally. So what's their image on the intranet? What's their image that appears next to their emails on Outlook? Do they have an external facing page on executives for your company? What are they looking like there? Is their bio up to date? What's their external look? LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, even Instagram. Are there any issues? Is there anything that you can find on those channels that your exec wouldn't want to be found? Just to have a bit of a sweep and think about that internal set of assets, images and materials that you need to have for your executive to help them be successful. And if you've got license to go there, what do they wear? Is it a good fit for the business? In a business that's potentially full of developers who are trying to be all Silicon Valley and hip and cool, you wouldn't want your executive to be wearing a suit. Learn your executive's voice. While it's really important that messaging is consistent across an organisation and that all leadership comms reflect the overall culture and values of a business, everyone's different. And for leadership communications to be authentic, they have to reflect the leader that they're coming from. And to do this, you need to use some imagination and think a bit more like a creative writer and learn your executive's voice in the same way that you would learn the voice of a character in a novel that you're writing. You need to be able to hear them in your head. This happens over time as you get to know them. I've got a new exec that I'm looking after at the moment. I don't know how to write for him or as him yet, but I hope to get there. You need to be able to replicate their words and phrasing, know what they would and what they wouldn't say. For example, would they say Australians, or would they say Aussies are really accepting our product at the moment? Or, Aussie consumers this, or, they say Australian. I worked for a lovely American lady who was from some of the southern states, and she would y'all people. How are y'all? And she would call people folk. You kind folk here. So yeah, writing her comms, I yawled and I folked because that's what she would have done. Also, how do they open their emails? Is it hi all, hi team, nothing, hello? How do they close? Are they regards, best wishes, nothing but their name, a dash? For example, here, have a look. This is an email. It's from a long time ago because I'm old. It's from 2008. It's from Jerry Yang, who was the CEO and founder of Yahoo. And he was notorious for never using any capitals or punctuation. And this is an email that he sent to his staff, and he's telling them that they're laying 10% of them off because they've got to save a lot of money because their earnings have tanked. So it's a very serious email, but it's still written like it's him. It's written, there are no capitals. People look at this and they go, that's from Jerry. It actually wasn't. By this stage, he had a sophisticated comms department in Yahoo, and they wrote this for him, but they never changed the style. They never started, making emails from Jerry Yang come out with full punctuation and using capitals, because the staff would have instantly known that it wasn't for him. But I actually worked with the gal who used to do his emails for him, and they just wrote it like him. And that's what learning someone's voice, well, that's an extreme version of writing in someone else's voice or style, but it's a really good thing to do. The other thing is when you are writing their speeches or their talking points, how do they like to work? So I've worked with executives who want it all in prose, all written out, word counted, estimated timing, footnotes on any stats that I use. I worked for executives who send me the bullet points, ask me to look up a few other things and then just run off a bunch of bullet points. People who want to be briefed a week in ahead. People who say that's way too much time, I'll forget it. 3 days ahead, 2 days ahead. I prefer the week ahead. People who invariably turn up and haven't read it and I need to have it printed out and give it to them. People who regularly, executives forget their reading glasses, print it out in 16 point and hand it to them. So you need to work with people. You're comms folk. You do this all the time. You're good with people. Everybody's different, and it's good to know how people talk so that you can replicate it and how people think. Okay, look for storytelling opportunities. So encourage your executives to give examples and tell stories. Storytelling really works for leadership comms, and it's best done verbally in town hall meetings or, larger divisional meetings or what have you, because it engages emotionally as well as intellectually and personally. Now, there is a lot of academic work about why storytelling works, but I think it's because it engages your imagination, because you're following along, you're creating images in your mind. It's called neural activation or something, but basically you're using your imagination. It makes you internalize the feelings, and also you mirror what's being said. So you imagine yourself in that position. So it personalizes it. And, you can just look at TED Talks. The most successful TED Talk presentations are 65% stories and 25% figures, with the remainder, why you should be listening to me, credibility stuff. So it's important to help your executive develop their stories. And if you're doing talks and speeches and presentations, write those examples for them. They may not want to go there. They might be very, numbers. It's your job to turn them into a great story.
Cathy, we have a question from Emma Lang, and she's asked if whether there's any research or data or really anything that you can offer on the importance of employees feeling personally connected to their leaders.
So I know that Aon Hewitt did something about that quite a long time ago now. No, I don't have anything specific.
All right, thank you.
There would be something out there though, but do you want me to find it and send you a link? I can do that. I was going to tell this whole story about Alan, but not his real name, which is an actual executive, but I think I've run out of time. So I don't know, should I do Alan's story or should we go to Q&A? That's my question.
That is so tempting though. You start with a story. How can we resist? There are no other pending questions for now. Please do tell us Alan's story.
Because I was going to be like, do I start with the story and then do the theory, or do I do the theory? And I'd already built it this way. So Alan, this is a true story, but I've changed all the names and the details. So don't try to figure out who it is because they kill me. So I was hired by Alan. He ran a very large division within a technically oriented company, and he was GM of that division. He reported up, he had a DR level, and he had like hundreds of employees. We got along really well in the interview. He'd been brought in after 10% of that division had been laid off, made redundant, which was about 3 months ago. So I did the interview, got the position, worked out my month notice period, and then I joined. Alan had replaced this guy called Graham. Now, Graham was a fantastic communicator. He was gregarious, outgoing, warm. He was a lot older than Alan, which didn't quite fit the very young kind of staff population. But Graham was a bit of an old hippie at heart. And when he remembered everybody's names, their children's names. And when he met with them, he would actually ask them, what are you dreaming of? What are you thinking of? He was really super engaging. However, he wasn't actually a great business strategist or great at operational execution, and the division had been severely underperforming. So in stepped Alan, highly analytical, business-minded. He lifted the hood, he had looked at everything, he asked people really hard questions, he was super focused. So on my first day, I had a meeting with Alan, and Alan seemed a lot more reserved than he had in the interview. And I started my round of one-on-ones to meet everybody. And on day 3, Alan had another meeting with me, and he looked very serious. And he said, I need your help. Most of my direct reports don't like me, and I feel sentiment has spread throughout the division. I've just had 360-degree feedback exercise done, and it's appalling. People don't trust me. And if I can't turn around this, I really feel like I may lose my role. I'm dead set serious. 3 days in, I got the guy who hired me telling me he thinks he's on his way out. It's terrible. So I believed him because I had 2 direct reports, and they had both kind of given me their anti-Alan sentiment already. They share their negative views, which is actually a reflection on how bad the culture must have been, that people felt that they could do that. And I'd only just booked in all of my one-on-ones with Alan's direct reports. So I made it my first task in those one-on-ones to just ask them about what they thought about Alan and use those skills as an empathizer to try and get to their true feelings. And I've still got my deck to this day. And this is what people told me. It's a summary, but they said that Graham was ridiculously emotionally intelligent. That's a quote. Very good with people, great soft skills, revered, loved, and an adored person. Seriously, this is what they said, and a hard legacy to follow. And Alan, they said, was very different. That was the police ones. Very directed, straightforward. His feedback is blunt. He's honest to a fault. Literally, it's a fault. Smart and strategic, structured, considered, analytical, and then this one. He's cold, unemotionally, and he treated me like he was conducting a criminal investigation. Those were his direct reports. So it really wasn't looking good. But I was able to use my newness and just ask lots of dumb questions. So 10% of the division had been made redundant. So there was a lot of shock and distrust and fear, and emotions were high. And a lot of the people who were made redundant were people, and the staff felt that there wasn't a very clear rationale, because one of the people that they made redundant was actually the comms person, the previous internal comms person. Graham, the outgoing GM, wasn't one of the redundancies. He left of his own accord and moved back to the UK. So the staff felt pretty abandoned, and they were putting all of this onto Alan. On top of this, I discovered that some of Alan's direct reports had gone over his head and spoken to the CEO and to some of the global folk, saying that Alan wasn't a good cultural fit. So there was kind of this movement to, not so subtly, push for Alan to be replaced. So this all kind of compounded because Alan's direct reports were giving off anti-Alan vibes. The staff had also been quite open with me about their negativity and how different he was and how he wasn't fitting in. He also didn't have kids, a wife or a girlfriend, but he did have a collection of exotic birds, kid you not, and they started calling him the Birdman. So I reported all of this back to Alan, and he looked at me and he said, I have to trust you because I have no other options. Can I trust you? I said, yes, you can. But this very rational, analytical person at that time was distressed and slightly paranoid because of everything that had gone on. He was new, it wasn't working. It was really stressful. I've got 3 minutes and then I'm off the air. So I also came back with a plan. This is the Aon Hewitt stuff. During times of change, people want to be connected. They want to feel like they have some control. They want to know clarity about their career opportunities, and they want to know about how they can build their capabilities. And I shared this theory with Alan because he was a very rational person. But at that point in time, the rationality was gone. He just wanted emotionally, what are we going to do? And this was Alan's plan. I said to him, you need to have visibility to the staff. You need to go to lunch. I'm going to have to really bring this in home. I said, you need to go to lunch in the canteen every second week with somebody that you can talk to everybody, just be a regular guy. We need to introduce question time to every all hands, to every town hall meeting. It wasn't there at the time. At the end of everyone, you sit up there, any members of your leadership team are in the audience, anybody can ask you any question they want, complete transparency. We need to do an image upgrade. He said, what's wrong with my image? Alan looked, I don't know that much about men's fashion, but Alan looked like he just did not care. So he was this company, it wasn't that young or hip anymore, the company, but they all thought they were. And Alan looked like he just threw on whatever he could in the morning. So I said to him, if you're willing to go there, get a stylist. He actually got himself something called a personal shopper who went out and bought him a whole new wardrobe. So that was kind of an easy one. You need to engage the hearts and minds. So we had a kickoff meeting coming up. And I said, you not only have to set the vision and strategy, you also have to tell them your story. You have to engage with them emotionally. What's your story, Alan? Now, Alan actually had a crackingly good story that he never told. He grew up in Newcastle with his brother and his sister and his unemployed mother, and his alcoholic father left him. He got an athletic scholarship and went to university in Sydney. He did a maths degree, found his niche, got another scholarship that was based on his academics and went and did his MBA in London. So he had basically come from being a Newcastle council accommodation, welfare kid, and become what he had become. He never told the story because he didn't want anybody to pity him. And he never told the story because he felt so guilty because his brother, who he left back there in that circumstance, ended up in jail after using a plastic gun to hold up a service station. True story. So I said, you have to tell that story. And he really didn't want to. We worked very hard on it. And at the kickoff, he did the strategy and he covered off, the annual goals, and he did all that. He could do that in his sleep. When it came to his personal story, he got very emotional. He found it very difficult. It was really hard to watch, but he did make a connection. And so many people came up to him afterwards and said, I really understand. And what he said was, I am focused, and I am focused on the success because I want everybody to have job security. I don't want anybody to face the kind of financial instability that I did when I was a kid. See, I'm tearing up about it now. So storytelling is very important. And look, not everybody became an Alan fan. And Alan was still like, he was on the spectrum. He was so meticulous but he was a nice person and he cared about people. And that's how I'd like to wrap up. It was Steve Vamos, who was CEO of Microsoft Australia, said to me, if you want people to think you care about them, you have to care about them. And that's what real authenticity is.
Thank you so much, Cathy. We are at time. The complete recording will be available on the platform. So if there's any part that you missed, maybe because the live stream might have cut off, please feel free to check out the end part of the recording. Cathy, thank you so much. And that was a great story. I'm glad you shared it. It will make a big difference, I'm sure.